Welcome to the Grueling Truths NFL Legends Show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo. Gridiron Mo is a new interactive football app where you get to call what you think the offense or defense should do during a live NFL game and see what all other fans have called also. So check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, and tonight we're excited to welcome in to the show a guy who started Super Bowl 23 for the Cincinnati Bengals, played over, a decade in the NFL with the Bengals and Buccaneers. Help us welcome to the Grueling Truth, Bruce Reimers.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Now, Bruce, I gave you a big introduction. That's all you came up with there?
Well, you know what? When we first started talking and you said, well, I'm just over here in Indiana. I'm just a guy out here in Iowa. So, I don't really think that I'm anything special. I live in a town of less than 4,000 to 5,000 people here. Everybody knows who I am. I don't expect any big standing ovations or anything, because I'm just an everyday normal guy. I go to work in the morning, I get home at night. So, that's kind of the way I am.
You talked about you live in Iowa now. I know you grew up in Iowa. What was it like growing up in Iowa, and when did you first start playing football?
Well, I grew up out here in the Midwest. I live in a little town called Humboldt, which is about 120 miles straight north of Des Moines, for all of you people that know where Des Moines, Iowa is. So I'm up about 25, 30 miles from the Minnesota border. I grew up in a family that we had 7 kids. My mom and dad, there was always something going on. This was back when kids played outside. I don't know what it's like out that way anymore, but
only my kids play outside. That's because they drive me nuts when they're in the house and I chase them out there.
The kids and computers and all of the different games and stuff that they play on computers. We didn't have that. We played down in a vacant lot. Like I said, with 7 kids and all the neighbor kids, we'd play baseball in the summer and football and we ice skated and whatever. So, when we were outside and you heard my mom yell, "Dinner's ready," with 7 kids, you didn't wait for the second call. You hauled your tail up the street, because you didn't know how many of those kids in the vacant lot was going to come along for the meal, and you wanted to make sure that you were there for the first passing of the meal. So that was just the way our family was. With 7 kids, we always were at a sporting event. We always were, wrestling was big in my family. I loved football from the time that I first saw the game. I can remember coming home from church on Sunday and whoever got to the TV first pretty much laid claim to what we got to watch. So I was always pretty insistent on getting there because I wanted to watch football on Sunday, and I constantly was dreaming. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted. I wanted to just say that I knew I could do it. I just had to have the opportunity to do it. And I played in a small high school. I was given a chance to play college football at Iowa State, and thank God was good enough to get an opportunity, and the Bengals gave me an opportunity with Coach McNally to carry on a dream that I'd been dreaming for years, but I got to fulfill that dream and to live every kid's dream of standing at the home plate, batting at the World Series or running out on the tunnel for a Super Bowl or, whatever it is. I got to live my dream.
Now, you talk about you went to Iowa State. You want to talk a little bit about your career at Iowa State?
I had Iowa State and Iowa were probably the 2 major players that recruited me when I was in high school. And that year, both coaches, Earl Bruce had just left Iowa State and came out your guys' way He went out to Ohio State. So Donnie Duncombe came from Oklahoma and took over at Iowa State. And the same year, Iowa had made a coaching change and brought Hayden Fry in. And
yeah.
I guess, I've always said if hindsight was 20/20, I'd have been a lot smarter person because Iowa ended up going to a couple of Rose Bowls, and with Hayden Fry, they did, they had some great teams. But I guess I went to Iowa State because of the coach that had been recruiting me was Jim Williams, who was kept on the staff because he was an Iowa guy and had the recruiting connections, and I was recruited as a linebacker, if you can believe that. I was recruited I was an All-American in high school as a linebacker. I loved to hit. I loved to play defense, and my freshman year, and I was covering a kickoff, and I got hit in the back and hurt my knee and ended up having to have knee surgery. And I partially tore the ligament. So they recommended that, they couldn't fix it at that time. So he said, it'd probably be safer if you'd come and play on the offense. So I said, I don't care where I play as long as I can play. I just wanted to be on the field. So I moved over to offensive line with the guy that recruited me, Jim Williams. And I guess from there I started, I was redshirted after I hurt my knee, and I ended up starting for like 3.5 years. And then I guess the rest is kind of went to Cincinnati in the 8th round. Really didn't plan on, I'd had 4 knee operations, unsure, but still had that dream. Coach McNally came and worked me out at Iowa State, and I guess I was lucky on that last day and made the team and ended up making it for the next 10 years. So it was, like I said, every child's dream of getting to play in a league that you can only dream of.
Now, you go back, you were an 8th-round draft pick with the Bengals. Your first training camp, was there any players there that took you under their wing, helped you out?
When I first got there, Mike Wilson, who we called Moon Pie,
yeah.
He was one of probably the characters of Jimmy's group, because Mike he always had this big dip in, and he always gave Jimmy that, oh hell, Jimmy, it's not that big a deal, and he was probably one of those guys that you just gravitated towards because you knew something funny was gonna pop out of his mouth. And then we had Anthony Munoz, who was this bigger than life all world type guy that just was so normal. You couldn't really even imagine that he's supposed to be up on this pedestal, but he was just a normal guy. We had Max Montoya, Dave Remington. I knew Dave from when he played at Nebraska, so he was more normal type. But then I'll never forget walking in, and God, there's Kenny Anderson, and there's Chris Collinsworth, and some of the guys that just wow. That first time down there, it was crazy. So
now you talked about it. You played for one of the great offensive line coaches in NFL history, Jim McNally. Can you tell us what made him different than other offensive line coaches?
I think that probably what made him was his work ethic. I think that Jimmy never, ever felt comfortable. It was like he was never, ever going to leave some stone unturned. He would, if he thought that he remembered, a defensive line coach that is now coaching for so-and-so, and they ran a twist back in 71, he'd dig back until he found that tape, And, as sure as the day was Sunday that we were going to play, that usually popped up, and it was like, Jimmy, how did you? I just remembered it. I just had this feeling, and that was Jimmy. He was never ever one to be. He was never going to let somebody out prepare his boys, and that's what he considered us, his boys. His gang, his guys, and that was to this day. I still see things that pop up on Facebook and that he's still out doing clinics, still doing it for kids because he loves the game and he loves and then you see him on the sideline, every once in a while here, that was Jimmy, there he was. He's just bigger than life. So, that is the guy that, we'd get home from a road trip 2-3 in the morning, and he'd go down to Spinney and start watching tape. So we'd come in the next day to watch the game, and it's like, Jimmy, did you go? Oh, I just came down here because I wanted to start. It's like, are you kidding? But that was him. He just, the love of the game, and no one was going to out-prepare him.
Well, now your first year with the Bengals, 1984, I know the Bengals started off slow, 1-6, ended up 8-8. What do you remember about that season?
I'll never forget. I was an 8th-round draft choice. Brian Blados was a 1st-round draft choice. Actually, Brian was drafted in front of Boomer. So it was one of those deals that we had Blades, we had Boomer, we had Ricky Hundley. I mean, the draft choices on that team were just crazy. And Bruce Kazerski was a 9th-round pick, and they kept Brian Blados, myself, and Bruce Kazerski, all three of us that first year. So it was like, they only kept 8 or 9 guys. We didn't have the what do they call it now, the practice players.
Yeah.
At that time. So if you were kept, you had to be ready to play. So I think it was one of the first, I think it was our first game that year. We played out in Denver. And Anthony, of course, it's getting towards the end of the game, and I think Anthony either cramped up or had to have an IV or something, and if I remember right, he came out for a series, and I had to go in and played against, I think it was, I want to say it was either Rulon Jones or Carl Mecklenburg. And, of course, you know me, I'm doing it down both legs, thinking, holy cripes. And I gave up a sack. And it was like, when I come off the sideline, you got that look, the Jimmy look, like, but he didn't say nothing, He just come over and he explained, now you know what happened. And it was like, Jimmy, I was nervous as all get out. Well, I know, but you got to be over that. It's done. You're done being a rookie. So it's like, no, I'm really not. But that was just him, He was always the teacher, always the, and I'd almost be scared to death to think today if he was coaching and had an iPad and had the ability to pull it up and, he'd have us huddled around, I could just picture him having us on the sideline huddled around him trying to explain, here, look at this. Look, see, can you see? This is what your step, because his techniques, it was always, your step was wrong. It's like, how the hell do you know? Like, well, see, it's right there on film. Yeah, you're right. So you just had to, you knew if he told you something, he was right.
Well, now also 1984 brought the Bengals a new coach, Sam Weich. What was it like to play for Sam? I've heard a lot of crazy Sam Weich stories from old Bengal players.
Sam was one of those guys that he was coming from Indiana. He was the head coach at Indiana but he had his feet out in San Francisco and worked with the 49ers. So, I mean, he was an awesome coach. I think that his leadership, he was way ahead of his time as far as the no huddle, and we started working on this no huddle stuff. It's like, we just started toying with it, and then all of a sudden, we just this thing just keeps like snowballing, and like we keep, multiplying, and, it's like everything we did, we kept talking, we just go in and start talking and that's the way we did it at the line, we were just like we were in the huddle, but we had code names for everything. So Boomer or Kenny or Turk or whoever was in there at quarterback, they just start talking, and you were listening for just key words that, that told you what's live after what he said. And, the more we toyed with this and tweaked it and, the more it kind of grew on us, and the more kind of like, we definitely have an edge to be able to do this because, you can control the tempo. You can keep defenses right here in their 3-point. You can, and I just, to this day, I still can't believe that we made it all happen like that.
Yeah, and the thing I can't believe is Marv Levy then invented it in 1990.
Oh, yeah. This is the best
he
part.
threatened to have players fake injuries during the playoff game.
Well, not only that, but he ended up, he tried his damnedest in '88 before the AFC Championship. They were trying to petition the league to see if they could get us not to be able to run it after we done it all year.
Yeah, and Don Shula supported it.
Yeah. So it's like, seriously? Because it's illegal. Well, it isn't illegal. We've been doing it all year. So, I don't know. I just...
and also, weren't you guys about the first NFL team to zone block?
Well, I don't know about... I guess I know that Jimmy, but I don't know which of his gang of gurus, because there was a whole bunch of them that worked together. Every time every stadium that you'd go to, he'd have to introduce you to, what's his name, used to be the guy from the Colts that was Peyton's offensive coordinator forever. Well, him and
Tom
Jimmy
Moore.
were buddies.
Yeah,
there you go, Tom. And so he was up at, I think at that time he was at Pittsburgh. So I really don't know. Excuse me, who was the innovator of the zone blocking, but I know from day one in 1984 when I stepped off the plane and onto the carpet at Spinney Field, that was what he started teaching from the first night, was this: your drop step, your zone step, your bucket step, it's just, that was Jimmy. So like I say, I don't know where he learned it. I don't know where, but it was ingrained in his head, and he knew that once you got everybody believing in it and you get that tailback at 7 yards and you get him to run to the heels of the offensive line before he made his cut. And Jimmy always stressed that. If he ain't running it to the heels of you guys and he makes his cut, by God, he's on his own.
Yeah.
It's like, Jimmy, I think he's cutting back too early. No, just they know where they're going. So that was Jimmy. He was always, he kept track of everything. So
Now, the Bengals, 1984, 85, 86, just barely missed the playoffs all those years, especially 84 and 86. You get to 87, the bottom kind of dropped out with the strike, the 49ers game. Can you tell us a little bit on your perspective where the turnaround for 1988 began and what kind of compelled that turnaround?
You know, I think that as I remember, and I've been hitting the head a lot, so I don't know if what I'm remembering was the truth, but I remember that before we left, Sam kind of put us all together and said, listen, you know what, our time here, we need to start clicking because we've invested a lot of time. We know we've got the nucleus, the team is here. We just got to figure out, and and this was before all of the off-season conditioning and where everybody stayed almost year-round. So when the season was over, a lot of guys, I came home, so that they weren't all together. But for some unknown reason, that off-season, before the 88 season, I just remember I had this, this in my chest or in your heart, you could feel, this is something that, we're building, we're getting better, and all during, working out and come back to training camp or preseason after the draft, and you get up to Wilmington and all this stuff, and you just knew something was going to happen, and it was like everybody came in shape, and everybody was ready to go, and and it was just like magic, and that season was, just one to couldn't hardly believe, and I think that's kind of the, you see teams that do that. You see teams, whether it's baseball or football or whatever, but they start believing in each other, and they just almost out of control. They just know what's going on. They have something. They're just wanting to go, and that's kind of the way we were.
Yeah. You talked a little bit childhood dream, Super Bowl. What's your biggest thing you remember from that day? This doesn't have anything to do with that day, but my wife and I have two kids that, my stepkids, when my wife and I got married, so they got to go to the Super Bowl. My wife and I had two daughters, and my oldest daughter was like 8 or 9 months old when we went to Miami to the Super Bowl. And here about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, we're sitting there getting ready to watch the Super Bowl, and Amy looks over at me and she goes, Dad, you suppose someday we could ever watch your Super Bowl? And I looked at her and I said, what? She goes, you suppose someday we could ever watch your Super Bowl? I've never watched it. And I said, Aim, I've never watched it. Yeah, I'm a Bengals fan. I've got it on DVD, and I've never watched it.
I said, I can almost recall the thing in my head, almost every play. But she says, yeah, but Dad, I was only like 9 or 10 months old, so I don't even remember you playing. And I never even thought of that. I just, when we went to Tampa, she was a couple of years old, and she went to a couple of games, but, still at 3 or 4 years old, she doesn't remember her old man playing football. But anyway, I just remember going down there, and, you always think, what if? What if we would have had Stanley,
Yeah.
I mean, what if, I know the guy, I don't know, he was one of the best fullbacks in the league.
I'll tell you, the thing about Stanley is this. I've interviewed probably 10 to 15 Bengals off the 88 team, and almost every one of them off air will tell me you don't realize how important he was to that team.
Yeah. And I'm not taking anything away from Kennebrew or JB or whatever, but, when you have two backs that, when you got JB in the back and you got Icky and it just made us so much more versatile and so many more, swing pass or whatever. But, that's, like I said, hindsight. It was meant to be, I guess. I've never had any ill feelings towards him. I'll never forget the feeling. It was like someone reached in down my throat and ripped my heart and all of our hearts out that night when we're sitting in there, the night before the game. And it's like something's up, because they kept counting. We're missing somebody. Where's who? Well, Brian Blados is my roommate. He's sitting right here. I know. So then all of a sudden it comes out that, it's Stan. Stan's gone. So then, all of a sudden, instead of one of the happiest, here we're getting ready to go play, something's wrong. That's our team. That's part of us. So, and then we're in, once everything comes about, we, Sam and the coaches are trying their damnedest to, start bailing water, get it out of the lifeboat here, because we're still good. We're, nobody doubted that, but we're missing one of our guys, and that was, I just, it should be a wake-up call for anybody and everybody that has, any type of substance or any type of demon that, I feel bad for him. To this day, I feel bad for him.
Yeah, because he was a great player, and from what I've heard from all the former players, he was a really good guy, too.
Yeah, he was. He was one of those that, just happy-go-lucky, and God, I'll never forget, I remember where we were going on traveling one weekend, and he brought chitlins on the plane. And, of course, I've raised a lot of hogs, but I've never seen that part of a hog. Yeah. And when they opened that container and I looked at that and I said, what in the hell is that? Well, them are chitlins. You got to try them. No, I can eat about anything, and I can't eat that. And, oh, my God, then they just laughed. Oh, my God, you got to try them. No, I can't. I just can't do it. So
you never tried them?
No. Most 300-pound guys don't have a problem with eating, because we used to eat about anything and everything we could get our hands on. But that day there was a lot of us that just said, don't think so. We aren't going to give that and did not want chitlins. So, oh well. But I do. I wish him I wish to this day I don't have a clue. And that's probably one of the things that people have always said. When I got this little town that I live in, Dallas Clark grew up just north of me, like 15 miles. So when we got our gold footballs, they did an interview with the hometown newspaper here, and so town of 5,000, and we got two gold Super Bowls in this little town. So it's just that was the one thing that Dallas and I both told the reporter was, I don't care what little hole in the ground you call home in Iowa or Alaska or whatever, wherever it is, when you have a dream, you live that dream in your head every day. And I lived that dream, and I'd almost guarantee it tonight I'll dream about what we've talked about. And because I usually don't think about football, but it's, that was It's in my head now, and that's what I tell kids. If you want to be a doctor, or you want to be a lawyer, whatever you got in your head, dream it. That's how this world was made. That's how this country was as great as it is. Kids got up and said, by God, I want to do that. And go get it.
Yeah, now there's too many people that will just tell a kid that that's impossible.
Yeah, you know what? Well, to hell with them. That's what I'd say.
Because those are usually people that just failed anyways, miserably, and would like to see everybody else fail also.
That's exactly right. And you know what? Like I said, they just had the Iowa High School Wrestling State Tournament was last week. And I love wrestling because I think it's one of the true sports where you can't say, well, I didn't drop the ball, he did. Or I didn't strike out, he did. Well, when you're out on the mat, it's you, the other guy, and the referee. And I love watching how kids, you can tell if a kid's intense, if he's going at it, if he's trying to, win, or if he's coward, if he's, and really, well, that's the greatest thing about sports. It'll tell you how, you get you're back against the wall. There's certain people that are just going to say, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing that we teach our kids is, figure a way out of it. Figure a way to fight through the pain. People don't just wake up in the morning.
The problem with today's society is nobody really teaches their kids that anymore.
I know that, Mike, but nobody really wakes up in the morning, and if you wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I want to be a marathon runner today. I'm going to go out and run 26 miles. Are you crazy? I couldn't. I'm 55 years old, and I've never woke up thinking, I want to be a marathon runner today. So, but you know what? If I could just run out of the tunnel, I love to watch on ESPN the life stories.
Yeah.
I watched
the 30 for 30s and then the
30
NFL
for 30 here the other night.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Bears fan, but when Buddy Ryan was sitting there and his hand was moving and Mike Singletary, I had tears running down my cheeks because you know what? You could tell that meant Buddy Ryan meant something to Mike Singletary.
Yeah.
They aren't the same color skin, so they aren't biological. They aren't related. But Buddy Ryan, there was something that Mike Singletary connected to, and that was his coach. And that's kind of the way we all feel. It's like a fraternity. It's like a, whatever. We have a teammate that I just found out that is dying of cancer, and my heart just aches for him. And I hope and pray that, David Douglas is.
Now, I remember David. He was an offensive lineman from West Virginia, wasn't he?
Tennessee, okay. Yep. He
was a backup on the 88 team, wasn't he?
Yep, he sure was. And
hear that.
My heart, my prayers are with Carla and David and I and their daughter. I just, it's one of those things, but it's life. But it's, it's still, he was like a brother to all of us. So I got that message here the other day from Joe. Told me that things aren't good there. So just, I guess I'd give a shout out to Carla and
all our prayers are definitely out to David Douglas.
Exactly. So.
But, all right. Well, I hate to end it so quickly, but I guess this has been like 40 minutes, and we got to get your old coach on so he can tell us all about you, because he did tell me you were one of the toughest players he ever coached.
You know what? I don't know. He always I just tell him that I don't know how tough I was. I just, if someone backed me into the corner, I was, they were going to have to drag me out of there fighting, kicking, and whatever, because I'm too dumb to quit. And there was nothing that, you know, I have grandchildren, and I still have that competitive edge. So if my grandkids want to play checkers, there's still that thing in me, you know, that I want to win. But
yeah, you don't let them win either, because my wife thinks I'm mean because I'm like that with my boys. She goes, "Come on, man, they're like 12. You can't let them win once." I said,
well,
no, because soon, you know, I'll never live it down.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I just, you melt and thinking that that little kid has my blood going through their, you know, and I just think, and that's today's day. You know, those are things that are important, is my family and my wife and my kids, and my mom's still alive, and all of my brothers and sisters, and, you know, those are important things to me today. Football, you know, and I'll never forget, that's what Sam told us the day after the night of the Super Bowl. He come in, and no matter, we were all hurting, man. We were just torn apart. And Sam had the best line ever. He walked in, and I know we're hurting. But he says, he holds his finger up, and he goes, "I'm going to tell you, I can almost guarantee you the sun's going to come up tomorrow. And tomorrow, it's going to be a tough day, but we're going to get through it, and then it'll be a little easier. And then in a few years, we'll be talking about this." And it's like, yeah, but it still sucks. But you know what? I got to play there. And
you look at how many guys that played and, you know, even end up in the Hall of Fame that never get the chance to play in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that's the other thing. I wish that we'd all get together because we were all, you know, the high five and shake hands or whatever. But I truly, each one of those, I love those guys like they were my brothers. And I love the coaches. That's, you know, that's the, and I'm sure that doesn't make any difference whether it's the Bengals, the Bucs, the 49ers, whoever, everybody has that. But, you know, you spent almost a half a year with that group, almost every day, and a lot of nights and whatever. So you did become pretty close.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as a Bengals fan, even if a Bengals team won a Super Bowl now, that season would probably, maybe just because I was younger, I was a teenager, that season would still mean more to me than even that now, because I just remember the atmosphere in that stadium. I mean, I lost my dad a couple of years ago, but I remember going with my dad to those games, and, I mean, that's why I have so many 88 Bengals on, just to tell them that, you know, at least right here, I completely appreciate that and still remember it.
Well, you know, probably the coolest thing was I got to meet Paul Brown. He was alive when I was first there, and I'll never forget. You could always tell when it was Cleveland week because Coach Brown would pull in, and he'd come walking out, and he'd have his hat on, and he'd come walking out there, and he'd walk around, and Jimmy and all of us would be doing our walkthroughs, and Coach Brown would walk by, and he'd go, "Well, men, you know what week it is, right?" "Yep, Coach, we do." It's Brown week, right?" "Yep, we're going to kick their butts, right?" You know,
still mad at him.
Yeah, he's still mad at him. But, you know,
25 years later.
That's exactly right. And that's kind of the same way it is, you know, and when people say, "How could you do something like that?" You know, I can understand it. I can't understand a lot of things, but I can understand. You know, it's the Browns. It's the Steelers. It's the Oilers. But we had a lot of fun.
Well, once again, unfortunately, we're out of time. Truly an honor to have you on. Would love to have you back sometime if you're interested.
Hey, you got my number, and pass it on to everybody. I give him all my best. Tell Coach McNally he's the greatest.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce.
All right. Take care.
All right. Guys, make sure you check out the Grueling Truth Facebook page. Make sure you check us out on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher. Listen to our interviews this week. We had Coach Jim Hannafin yesterday. We'll have Coach Jim McNally here in a little bit, which will be posted tomorrow sometime. Also, tomorrow I'll be interviewing former Houston Oiler linebacker Greg Bingham. So make sure you check out all those shows. Check out our sponsors, Gridiron Mo, RealBengalFans.com, and SteelbergBox.com. So for Bruce Reimers, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.
Go Bengals.